Since we are into the part 2 of modern history question asked in UPSC prelims. Let's move to the first question. Red shirt movement were associated with whom? It was associated with Khudai Khidmatkars. In Persian, it means servant of God. It was started by Abdul Ghaffar Khan of Northwest Frontier Province, who was inspired by Gandhiji. It has nothing to do with communism or trade union, etc. Next, who coined Inqilab Zindabad? Inqilab Zindabad means long live revolution. It was coined by Urdu poet and freedom fighter Maulana Hasrat Mohani in 1921. It was popularized by Bhagat Singh and was the official slogan of Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. And it was used in 1929 by Bhagat Singh B.K. Dutt after bombing the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi. Later, for the first time in open court, this slogan was raised in June 1929 as part of their joint statement at Delhi High Court. Now it is frequently used by socialists and communists. What was the reason of fall of Vijayanagar Empire? It was because of the unity among the Muslim rulers. During Aurangzeb's reigns, who was not included in his government? As most of you would be knowing, Marathas was excluded from Aurangzeb's government. What was the stance of Indian National Congress during World War II? Their stance was that they would cooperate with British if India is granted complete independence. When did French supremacy in India come to an end? It came to an end in Battle of Vandewash. It was the part of Third Carnatic War, which spanned from 1758 to 1763. At Vandewash on 22nd January 1760, Count de Lille, a French commander, was defeated by the British general Sir Eyre Coote. After the defeat of French, Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763, which returned Chandernagore and Pondicherry to France. When, how, and what was the contextual backdrop of interim government formed at center? It was formed after the visit of cabinet mission and was formed from newly elected members of Constituent Assembly of India, not from direct elections. It was formed on 2nd September 1946 and lasted till the independence of India. Emperor at that time in Britain was George VI. Governor General in the initial phase was Lord Wavell. He was followed by Lord Mountbatten. And Secretary of State in initial period was Lord Patrick Lawrence. He was followed by Earl of Lisle. Interim government was reconstituted on 15th of October 1946 when Muslim League called off its boycott of participation in the interim government. So in India's interim government, the commerce portfolio was headed by C.H. Bhabha, finance was headed by John Mathai, law was headed by Syed Ali Zahid, railways and communication was headed by Asaf Ali. You can also go through the portfolios held by different person of All India Muslim League as it would be helpful in uh, multiple choice questions. Though British India remained under sovereignty of UK, interim government proceeded to establish diplomatic relations with other countries like USA. What was so peculiar about Lucknow session of Indian National Congress in 1916? It brought moderates and extremists on a common platform, courtesy any based, and it was presided by Ambika Charan Majumdar. Concession of separate electorates for the Muslims by the Congress party. Now let's move on to the features of the Lucknow Pact. The features were there shall be self-government in India. Muslims should be given one-third representation in central government. There should be separate electorates for all communities until a community demanded joint electorates. Fourth, system of weightage to minority political representation was to be adopted, giving minorities more representation in the government than their than their proportional than their proportion to their population. Adult franchisee for election to be adopted. No bill concerning a community be passed if a bill is opposed by three-fourths of the member of that community in legislative council. And seventh, separation of executive from judiciary. It gave perception of Hindu-Muslim unity. The pact gave perception of Hindu-Muslim unity. Sarojini Naidu hailed Jinnah as the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, a unity that lasted only for few years. The major blunder was approving one-third representation of Muslims, not because they deserved it, but it sowed the seed of communal politics. Second, every community pursuing their narrow interest, their voice and representation was to all was made to be known. Muslim members' strength in the legislature was laid down province by province, was one of the most dangerous pacifist policies of Congress. Not only it recognized communal representation, but also recognized communal privileges. In Imperial Legislative Council, Muslim representation was slated to one-third, although their population was not one-third. Any legislature could not work if any more on any more three-fourth member of any religion opposed it. It its consequence was introduction of communal veto. Moving on, what was Cripps mission and its background? Cripps mission was sent to secure full Indian cooperation and support for their efforts in World War II with a promise to give India dominion status. It was headed by Sir Stafford Cripps, who belonged to left-wing Labour Party, and he was also member of coalition war cabinet led by PM Winston Churchill, who was from Conservative Party. There was an American angle to it. US, as Britain's principal ally, saw things in even more urgent terms. Chief American strategic objective was aiding Chiang Kai-shek's physically isolated nationalist China against the expanding Japanese empire. The Japanese conquest of China's coastal areas meant that US needed India to serve as a major logistic hub to funnel aid to China and needed India's military manpower to secure routes for supplies through Burma. American and Chinese leadership was concerned that this would not be possible without the full support of a mobilized Indian population, requiring a breakthrough with Indian National Congress. In addition, the Roosevelt administration, which was busy formulating its vision for the post-war world, saw decolonization of Asia as a matter of national interest for both ideological as well as commercial reasons. Britain's reliance on US for lend-lease supplies for war effort meant that President Franklin Roosevelt's pressure had at least appeared to be taken seriously, especially in the light of military disaster of Southeast Asia, particularly after fall of Singapore on February 15, 1942, as well as retreat from Rangoon. Gandhiji famously said that Cripps' offer of dominion status after the war was post-dated check drawn on a failing bank. All India Muslim League rejected Crips because their concern was Muslim right of self-determination was ignored. The main proposals of Crips mission was an Indian union with dominion status would be set up. It would be free to decide its relations with the Commonwealth and free to participate in UN and any other international body. Secondly, after the end of the war, a constituent assembly would be convened to form a new constitution. Members would be partly elected by the provincial assembly through proportional representation and partly nominated by the princes. Third, British government would accept new constitution subject to two conditions. First condition was that any province would not willing to join the union could have separate constitution and form a separate union. Second, the new constitution making body and British government would negotiate a treaty to effect the transfer of power and to safeguard racial and religious minorities. In the meantime, defense of India would remain in British hands, and the Governor General's power would remain intact. So, how did Cripps mission differ from the various offers of the past? The making of the constitution now was solely in the hand of Indians and not mainly in the Indian hands, as contained in the August offer. A concrete plan was provided for the Constituent Assembly this time. Option option was available to any province to have a separate constitution. This was a blueprint for India's partition. Free India could withdraw from the Commonwealth, but Cripps mission was basically a failure because Gandhiji opposition led to INC to reject the British offers. The official negotiators were Nehru and Maulana Azad. Secondly, Cripps modification of original British offer, which provided for no real transfer of power. And thirdly, behind the scenes, effort of the Viceroy Lord Lithgow and Secretary of State LSS Emery was there to sabotage the mission. Also, right to provinces to secede as this went against the principle of national unity. There was absence of any plan for immediate transfer of power and absence of real share in defense. Governor General's supremacy was retained and demand for Governor General being only constitutional head had not been accepted. Nehru said existing structures and autocratic powers would remain and few of us will become the viceroy's leveraged camp followers and look after canteens and the like. The stance of Muslim League was they criticized the idea of a single Indian Union and did not like the machinery for the creation of the Constituent Assembly and the procedure to decide on the accession of provinces to the Union. Liberals Hindu Mahasabha criticized the basis of the right to secede. Depressed class thought the partition would leave them at the mercy of the caste Hindus. Sikh objected the partition would take away Punjab from them. The incapacity of Cripps to go beyond the draft declaration and adoption of a rigid take it or leave it attitude added to the deadlock. What was Khilafat movement all about? Khilafat movement stressed on the restoration of Turkish Khalifa as the head of Indian Muslims. There was a pan-Islamist political protest by Muslims of British India to influence the British government, not so as to not to abolish the Ottoman Caliphate, which was there from 1517 to 1924 and was viewed as de facto leaders and the representative of Islamic world. De facto means the practice that exists in reality, even if not legally recognized by official law. Khalifa's supremacy and sovereignty was strictly observed as and was treated as religious head of Muslim community. It was protest against the humiliating sanction placed on the Khalifa and the Ottoman Empire after the First World War by Treaty of Sevres. Movement collapsed in late 1922 when Turkey gained a more favorable diplomatic position and moved towards secularism. By 1924, Turkey simply abolished the roles of Sultan and Caliph. From 1876 to 1909, Abdul Hamid II was the Ottoman Emperor. He launched an Islamic program in a bid to protect the Ottoman Empire from the Western attack to crush the westernizing democratic opposition at home. He sent an emissary, Jamaluddin Afghani, to India in late 19th century to evoke religious passion and sympathy among Indian Muslims. Abdul Hamid II was forced to restore the constitutional monarchy, marking the start of second constitutional era by the Young Turk Revolution. The Ottoman Empire, having sided with the Central Powers, that is, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, Ottoman Empire, these were all called Quadruple Alliance in World War II. They suffered a major military defeat. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 reduced its territorial extent and diminished its political significance. But the victorious European powers promised to protect the Ottoman emperor's status as the Caliph. However, under Treaty of Sevres in 1920, the name was derived because it was signed in an exhibition room at a porcelain factory in Sevres, France. So, under Treaty of Sevres, the territories such as Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Palestine were severed from the empire. Within Turkey, a pro-Western, secular Turkish national movement arose. During Turkish War of Independence, which lasted from 1919 to 1923, Turkish revolutionaries led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk abolished Treaty of Sevres with the Treaty of Lausanne. Lausanne is a place in Switzerland. Pursuant to Atatürk's reform, Caliphate was abolished in 1924. That was all for today. See you next soon. Thank you.